where men can be men. So I want you to imagine something with me. Just stay with me for a second. This is the hook. This is the hook that will get you into watching the entire and listening to the entire rest of the podcast. I want you to imagine me walking into your house. Your wife, your kids are gone. All right. We've made plans. I'm going to come over. I'm going to pick you up. We're going to go to the bar and we're going to watch a football game. And as I walk into your bedroom, I get slapped in the face with the most pungent odor and say something to you like, Jesus, why does it smell like a freaking sourdough bakery in your freaking bedroom? Right? And you look at me and you say, that's interesting. I just noticed an empty box of Monistat 7 in the garbage can, and clearly my wife has a bad yeast infection. And the two of you, we high five each other and we go about our day. Like, can you imagine that happening? Can you imagine not getting upset about that or taking it personally or any of that stuff? Well, on today's episode, we are going to be talking about the uncanny ability to be able to answer questions that are ultimately a personal assault on you as an individual. It could depend on what is being said that sparks this frustration, that sparks this anger. But if you go to this episode in my podcast, which is acknowledging you're more than just an ATM, we talk about one stage of the Goddard methodology, which is acknowledging that it's acknowledging that the primary ability of a man is focused on your ability to provide. Okay? Just acknowledging that. All right? The last episode that we did are the top 3 things you and your kids can do to confirm you're an epic dad. And you can watch that one right there, or there, or there, or there, or there. Okay? And the last thing that I gave you that will confirm to yourself and to your kids that you're an epic dad is teaching them how to ask questions. Okay? In this episode, we're going to be spending some time talking about how you answer questions. And since you're a man and you understand man language, you know by default that when you get in a room together with a bunch of guys and your bunches of friends and you go bowling and you play pool or you do whatever you do, the way that you communicate is by busting other guys' balls. And if you can bust guys' balls hard enough that they get upset and take it personally, you've won. You've won. Because now they're not going to get away from it. And on October 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, that's going to be me and my 6 friends, all men, are going to do a live stream talking about the man game. And so I've labeled the man game the banter that goes back and forth between one man and either another man or a group of men. And if you can identify with having that happen to you, then you'll be able to understand the reason why I'm doing it. Because there's an art to asking questions and there's an art to answering questions. And most of the time, when men are bantering back and forth, if they're bantering back and forth with somebody that says something to them that they take personally, that should be a red flag. Not in the sense that it's a bad thing, but what is it about what they said that made you react the way that you did? Did they cut on your wife? Did they cut on your mom? Did they cut on one of your kids? Did they cut on your low self-esteem for whatever? What was it that caused you to turn it around and get frustrated and angry? Now, in dynamics like this that happen, let's just say at the bar, there's usually alcohol involved. And if that's the case, these types of scenarios can escalate very, very quickly and not end up in a good situation. But the game that we're going to play on October 3rd, titled The Man Game, is going to be a game where you and I are good friends. We know each other well enough to know that we don't really want to upset you or hurt you. So we agree that there's one area that you will not talk about when you're busting balls during the man game with one of your friends. And that one area that you won't talk about is if you or your buddy that you're playing this game with has a daughter. Like, that's out of bounds. Everything else is in bounds, but you can't cut on the dude if he's got a daughter. That's just a whole different area you don't want to go down. But every other area is completely wide open. And what will happen is, because you're already used to experiencing what it's like to be in the back of a work truck where your job is landscaping and you're the new guy in the crew and you sit behind the driver because the driver's tall, the seat goes back all the way, you're the low man on the totem pole, right? You don't talk, you don't order anything that somebody else doesn't order, all right? And that's where you go. We all know what that world is like. And it's not until you've gotten some time under your belt on that landscaping crew that you can move over to the second seat behind the passenger, which he's shorter, which gives you a little bit more leg room, or even in the passenger seat. Now, if you become the type of manager that you're driving the truck, you've made it. You've absolutely made it. You're probably making $4 more than the guy who's sitting behind you, but you're in the driver's seat, and you got to teach this guy what he can and what he can't say. That's just kind of how it works. All right? So the man game is not about upsetting your friends in a way that they get upset. It's about getting them to a point where they're just about to get upset and you realize that you should stop. Okay? And you do. But you can also play the game where the first person who takes whatever comment is being said personally loses. Now, you might be asking yourself, why would I want to play a game like that? The reality is if you're a man, Gen Xer, Gen Zer, you've been playing this game for years, right? You grew up with it, you understand it. This is how men talk, and this is how men communicate. And the purpose for playing the game is that if you play it with people that you're comfortable with and that you trust, like your brother or whatever, and you go back and forth, hopefully you'll be in a position where you'll say, stop, what you just said really upset me. All right. And then you both agree to stop, but you need to write down what upset you. Okay. That will help you to understand what areas you may consider wanting to work on and understand, so that you're no longer sensitive to that type of verbal assault any longer. Because when we respond to a personal attack, we're not thinking rationally, we're reactive, we're angry, we're either deeply upset, we're not on our game. And you want to get to a place where no matter who you connect with, whether it be your wife, whether it be a business partner, whether it be a complete stranger, that you are able to hear what they're saying to you without taking any of what they're saying to you personally. you'll be in a much stronger position, and the comments will roll off your back like water off a duck. And I know you've seen examples of people like this. And the examples that come to mind for me out of the gate are Ted Cruz. You know, he's the Texas senator, maybe in the House of Representatives. I can't remember, but he's a career politician. And he never takes any comments personally. And he's able to sidestep them or to ignore them, or worst case scenario, it's just lie about it. You know, another one that's really good at this is Nancy Pelosi. She is a pro at doing this kind of stuff. So if you can be the type of person where you are going to get assaulted by all of the types of questions that will be asked of you in front of the media, then you'll be prepared for a lot of stuff that isn't public, that is private, and you'll be able to better understand how to appropriately handle that situation. And I want nothing more for you while you play this game with someone that you care about and you like, that you learn those areas of sensitivity or the areas that are boils for you, right? That, like, they're blisters, they hurt. Because, like I said before, what if there are areas and you choose to ignore them for whatever reason? What I can tell you is, based on my experience, is that what you don't work on now, you will work on later. And if you keep your emotions bottled up inside and refuse not to look at them, then you'll just keep getting worse. And I don't think that's a place where any of us want to be. My point behind the purpose of the man game is that if you can get to a place where you believe that you're 95% covered with the type of verbal armor that you need not to take anything personally, then you'll be in a position of safety. Let's call it that. You'll be in a neutral position, and you'll be able to answer questions that are being asked of you in a clear and concise way, without overreacting, without getting angry, and without getting upset. Now, if you're a person who is eager to become accountable for either actions they were a part of but not responsible for, or for actions that you have committed against people that you care about or other family members, that is a level of personal accountability that I am all about. As a matter of fact, on the website, thein-betweenman.com, there is a methodology that I put together called the Goddard methodology. And it's focused on 3 areas. The primary area of the methodology is focused around the traditional male value system, and how the male value system today primarily values a man's ability to provide. Okay? And it belittles or diminishes any work that has to do with emotional improvement, emotional accountability, or even spiritual substance. All right? So acknowledging that that is there is stage 1. The next stage is, do you question whether or not the things that you just acknowledged are true? And how do you know if they're true or not? Well, you need to ask more questions. Okay? So if you're in a position where you're not willing to hear the truth about the answers to those questions, you'll be less likely to want to move forward, and you'll become stagnant and toxic. If you are no longer questioning and have accepted that these dynamics are true, then you're willing to do two things. Look at the situation for what it is and accept it, but then refuse to take accountability for it ever happening to you. Okay? So you've acknowledged, you've questioned, and you've accepted the reality that the traditional male value system in most areas lacks emotional and or spiritual substance, but you refuse to admit that it could happen to you and what that process looks like. The other option is accepting that and being willing to move forward and uncover what it is that you're sensitive about. And you can do that with me as your coach. We'll go through it together. It's a very dynamic and personal coaching dynamic that we work together to help you get to that point where you can accept that there are aspects about your past, your present, your whatever it happens to be that you are willing to look at. And let me just share one other point before I let you go. The other point that I want to make goes back to the podcast that I mentioned about acknowledging that you're more than just an ATM. I referenced in that podcast episode a quote by Carl Jung. He's a predominant therapist. And he says that there is a necessary suffering to being a human being. Okay? And why am I bringing it up at the stage where you've accepted that there are aspects about yourself that you don't like and that you're willing to move forward to understand? It's because that is a time where you're not going to feel great. It's going to feel like you're struggling. It's going to feel like you're suffering. And instead of ignoring it, you're embracing it and you're walking through. And I'm not saying that you have to like it all the time, and I'm not saying that you have to embrace it. I'm just saying that you've made the conscious decision to accept that I know that I'm going to be a better person coming through the other side of that experience. And then what will happen to me when I do? And what usually happens to people who do and are willing to accept that change, they grow. They become different people. They break out of their shell that they've been stuffed into for a really long time, and they grew a new one. And they become more aware of certain scenarios, dynamics, experiences, emotions that kick them off or make them more upset than other situations. And that's really the goal here. The goal here is to teach you how to get to a place where you're not taking personal verbal assault personally because you've recognized that you've taken it personally and that you're willing to take a look at it. That you're willing and have accepted that you want to take a look at it. Now you can accept it, but willingly refuse to want to do anything about it. That's another option that you can do. And so what happens to the two people, one who accepts it and one that refuses to accept it? What happens to them? How do they live their life? Are they living happy, joyous, or miserable and resentful? Right? Do they join more polarizing groups to push a narrative that they think that they believe in? Or are they open to debate and having real conversations about real issues that matter and not being upset if you don't agree? It's far more complicated than that. But hopefully this podcast has given you a start to where you could try to learn how to do this. We could try learn how to do this. And that's all I'm asking. That's all I'm asking for you is to try. Because there is a necessary suffering that happens to being a man. And if you refuse to do it, you're staying in a shell, a lobster shell that you've grown out of, but you haven't broken free out of. And every movement and every turn that you make, you're agitated, you're frustrated, you're angry, you're pissed off, you're sore, you're blistered, and you're holding on to that fucking old lobster shell because that's all you know. If you let go of the shell and it comes off you, another one's going to grow. It's not going to happen overnight. But relatively quickly, you build up another set of armor that confirms that you're a different guy than you were before you started. So why wouldn't you want to do that? I think you would. Do me a favor. Consider subscribing to the YouTube channel. We have our live on October 3rd at 9 p.m. Eastern Time. And tonight, I am also going to be on Carrie Hamilton's Bottoms Up podcast. We've been talking these last couple weeks about getting on her podcast, and I am going to share my story of, grief and trauma and alcoholism and addiction and sobriety and personal experience with all of you, including her. So please consider joining. I love you. And dinner has been served. Do me a favor. Do yourself a favor. I'll see you in there. See you on the next one.